Hello. Let's do a quick mic check. Hi, Des. Okay, so I just bumped my camera. Uh, so it's going to be a second while I get it set up again. The issue with my camera is that because it's so skewed, every time I move it, um, every time I move it, I have to reset the transformation and fix it. Very annoying. How's everybody's day going in the meantime? I'll talk to chat if anyone's here. I mean, obviously, I know Des is here. All right, you know what? I am going to. Um, all right, I'll switch over and you all can see what I'm doing. You can see how much goes into correcting the perspective here. I hate doing this live, but like I said, all it takes sometimes is a single bump and it's all messed up. Des says, I'm painting, so probably won't be typing much. Understandable, but have you up on the monitor and reference on the other. Oh, that's nice of you. Thank you. That's understandable. And I'm happy about that. You should be painting. Des is a really good painter. She's working on a really cool project right now. Wish there was an easier way of doing this. Actually, there is an easier way of doing it, but it gives worse results. So easier but worse. So not exactly better. All right. Yeah, like I said, I hate doing this on stream, but oh well. It's so close. The um the green guide, by the way, is a guide I made for myself that is proportionately matching the. I have a few different ones, but they match the common sizes that I tend to paint at. It's very useful. I should probably share it in the Discord at some point because of how like helpful it is. It's just a PNG. It's not anything major, but still useful. All right, there we go. That's really close. Okay, and now for my face cam. Yeah, there we go. Hello, everyone. Sorry for the slow start. You can see the camera. Wait, where's my face? Why is my face not here? Okay. Yeah, you can see the camera is really close to my head. So sometimes uh, I do knock into it sometimes. I really try not to, but yeah, it does happen. All right. And as far as paintings go, clearly I'm going to be working on this one today. Should be fun and also good for stream because there's a lot that needs to be done on this. What's it called? Paintings when they're closer to um, nearly done. They're a little less exciting to watch. It's a lot of noodling away at it until it's done. Which is exactly where what, what's his name is at right now? David Tennant. It's almost done, but there's just like a few little things that I have to go back in and rework. Um, yeah, time is it's been a little restrictive lately, so haven't quite finished it. Oh, we might have a cat friend visiting. Let's see. Oh, nope. We don't, unfortunately. Not right now. Maybe later. So this painting I know is dry. So I'm just going to put out a bunch of oleo gel because I know I'm going to want to use that to oil out. And I finally found my paint squeezer. Almost out of oleo gel. Oh, I should rephrase that. I'm almost out of this tube. I already have another tube ready. To be clear, you don't have to use oleo gel for oiling out. You can use, quote unquote, plain oil if you want as well. I prefer it, but it's not necessary. I did order, what's it called? Some walnut oil oleo gel, but I haven't tried it out yet. All right. I was just trying to pump up the brightness a little bit. Don't know if it actually did, but I tried. I missed some spots. Let's see. In case anyone's curious, this is just my phone. I use it to film like vertical time lapses to make my life just easier for sharing things online. It's been a while since I worked on this. I literally don't even remember some of the certain aspects of this that I was focused on. Uh, all right. Well, this should be fun. I tend to do a lot lighter paintings and darker ones, so going dark should be fun. All right, I'm just going to put out a bunch of black because I know I'm going to need black. So I've mentioned this before. I use Mars black because I don't like ivory black, which is no longer made of ivory, at least. That's a plus. But it is made out of bones, and I'm not a fan. So I don't use it. But apparently there's a huge difference when it comes to Mars black between the brands. So um, I lucked out in a way because I just went with M-gram, not realizing that M-gram's Mars Black tends to be a lot smoother and shinier versus other brands, which can be a lot a lot more matte. Some of them apparently can be kind of gritty. So yeah, just be aware that if you want to buy if you want to buy Mars Black, just be aware that some brands are different than others. That goes with every paint, but you know, some tend to be worse than others. There are some advantages to Mars Black. Um, it's much stronger black compared to Ivory Black as far as like tinting strength. So when you mix it with other paints that are strong tinters, it holds its own pretty well. And there's a ton of other blacks out there too. A lot of companies have a chromatic black, which is the black that they mix out of two, usually two, but could be more theoretically, um, colors that make a very good black. So there's options out there if you don't want to go with ivory black. One black I like is uh, what is it? A chromatic black by Gamblin. Uh, Only problem with with a lot of blacks is they tend to, or dark colors in general, they tend to be more on the transparent side. Mars black is very opaque. So another advantage, another thing I like about Mars black personally. Uh, my entire palette isn't opaque, but I tend to favor opaque colors because I don't really focus on using what's it called? I don't really focus on using transparency in my painting process. So having opaque paint is, you know, better for me since I don't really use the transparency anyways. Having said that, my what's it called? Two of my colors are semi-transparent, which is phthalo blue and quinacridone rose. Both are semi-transparent, but because I almost always need to mix them with something, um, and that's something often being titanium white, it's not a big deal most of the time, or it's not a thing that is a problem. Also, I've run into this where I tried to cover something up, and even with titanium white, it can sometimes be challenging. If you can't wipe something, which is my go-to if I need to cover something, if I can, I'll just wipe it and repaint it. But if you can't, sometimes you need to do, sometimes you do need to do one or two coats of like titanium white to cover it, and then you can paint over it. Sometimes, unfortunately, that is the only way. Although, depending on what you're painting on, you can scrape pretty hard and like scrape off dry paint. It just depends on what you're painting on. You know, some things are more delicate than others. Also, don't ever sand unless you really know what you're doing. Even scraping, you got to be careful because you don't want to breathe in the toxic crap that is your pigments. Uh, you know, so be cautious when you do that. And that's why you don't sand either. It's just not worth it. So when I get back to a painting, I often start off with the background just as a way of like warming up on something that is, let's say, less of a priority in some ways. I think backgrounds are very important, but honestly, a lot of times there's a lot more leeway um, compared to when working on like the figure or the face. If a pillow is slightly off, or you know this fold is slightly in the you know wrong spot in some way, it's not exactly crucial. No one will be able to tell. It's not really a big deal. But we are so good at telling when, eyes are slightly off or something something like that. Technically speaking, I am using a bit of transparency at the moment because my paint isn't going on fully opaquely, but the intention isn't to glaze, it's just I'm not making an effort to put on thick paint to cover everything. So, a little different, even though technically it is using transparency, but it's not usually what people refer to. This one has a little bit of white in it, and it goes on so much more opaquely. It's it's very interesting taking such a long break from a painting and coming back to it. I almost feel like, how can I put this? you can learn a lot about your own thought process by doing that. Not too long of a break, but a bit. Like this one was, I think, a couple weeks because I had a few things in between. And I'm looking at it and I'm trying to figure out like why I made certain choices that I did. I'm looking and I'm just like, I feel like I made a bunch of really dumb choices uh, when I was working on this. I don't know if it was because I had something in mind very different or if I was just distracted or I've just improved since then and I'm looking at it going like, what was I even thinking? And I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure what the answer is. But if you do this enough, you probably see a pattern if you do it for yourself, I mean. And, you know, learning your own patterns is very useful. Patterns might not even be the right word, habits, you know, learning your own painting habits and, your painting flaws can be very, very helpful. Uh, Difficult to see and very frustrating to learn. Um, but yeah. But yeah, this one, looking at it now, everything seems way too light and way too saturated. I don't know if I was trying to do that on purpose or if I just was working my way towards making everything darker, in which case I feel like I should have just gone a lot darker a lot faster. I think that might be slightly a result of working off of white. It, my tendency is to work lighter than darker. Toning the canvas obviously would fix that. I don't tone the canvas, but theoretically that would fix the problem. I've talked about toning the canvas before. There's a lot of options for toning canvases. Um, you can do it with acrylics, though, as I'm finding out, if you do it with acrylics, probably it's good to add some maybe matte medium to it or something. Um, Definitely not gloss, put it that way. Um, but yeah, um, some people they tone it with acrylics. Some people use fast drying mediums to tone their canvas. Um, a lot of people just use something like Gamsol or mineral spirits of some kind, and then they put it on real thin If you use a pigment that dries fast, like raw umber, or I think burnt sienna is a popular one as well. That one dries pretty quickly too, from what I know. Um, you can do that, but I don't because, well, for a few reasons. One is I don't use solvents in my painting process, so I'd either have to prepare the canvas way in advance, or it's just not an option. And the other thing is too, I've actually worked on a pre-toned canvas before, or board, I should say, and it actually really got in my way. I I remember I was painting on it, and there were times where I couldn't figure out certain spots, like if I'd painted there or not. I had to like hold up the board at an angle to see, if it reflected or not, to see where I'd worked or where I hadn't. So that's one of the things I like about working on white. I definitely know that having this white underneath my palette is not helping as far as like making good decisions for a dark painting like this. I can actually take that white out. I just have to actually do it. But it's not a permanent thing in there, so I can remove it if I wanted to. That is one thing that's good about glass palettes, but if you do go for a glass palette, I would say don't get the gray ones, the ones that are already pre-colored. They have the ones that are like pre-colored with gray or other things, if you want the option of being able to change the color underneath the glass. If you don't and you have the experience, by all means, do what's best for you. But if you don't know for sure, you can just get the clear glass palette and do it that way. Or you can do what I did and just buy cheap glass from the hardware store for $5. I sanded the edges down with a fine sandpaper while wearing a mask outside, because I'll be honest, I don't know how bad for you inhaling glass dust is, but I suspect it's not good for you. That's, an assumption. But yeah. Yeah, it was like $5. So it is a lot cheaper. And for the record, all the glass palettes, the fancy ones, they're not like fancy glass, really. Like they're not, this is tempered glass too. It's not like it's going to make a big difference. That says I just use a glass microwave plate. Does that have a texture to it? Out of curiosity? That'd be because I'd looked at I was looking at glass cutting boards, but all the ones that I found uh, they all had some texture to them, and I didn't want that. But yeah, you can use any kind of glass technically. I mean, you want it to be smooth. Um, because that if it's smooth, you can use you can use a straight razor to scrape paint off. That says the texture is on the bottom, the top surface is not textured. That's good. Yeah, and I know someone who used a glass table, glass that they found on the side of the road. Uh, someone threw away like a big glass, I don't know what it was. And the thing was, junk, but the glass wasn't broken, so you just grabbed the glass. It was very thick though. Like it was like I think it was like half an inch thick, so it weighed a ton. I know some people do use like the glass from photos, from like picture frames. You can use those. However, my concern with those, they are cheap, but they are also, my concern is that they're cheap and they'll break easy. And given the price of this piece of glass that I bought at the hardware store, I feel like you're not really saving a ton of money by just getting a piece of glass from the hardware store at like, you know, if you can't find anything else, I should say. But like I said, picture frame ones, I'm worried that they'll shatter if you put any kind of pressure on them. That's my only concern with those. Because I know when I'm scraping, I can put quite a bit of pressure on the glass and it can flex a little sometimes. Try not to, but I do remember the feet in this one. I will say this, feet are not something, I'm not one of those people. It's not a thing that into at all. Uh, but uh, I do think they're funny that it's, like back there, almost like ears. That could be a fun painting too. Use your feet to make like bunny ears kind of thing. I don't know, it sounds cute to me. It is a surprisingly quiet night tonight. I wonder what's going on. I'm not talking about Des, I'm not talking about you in chat. I'm just talking about like I'm getting a sense of like normal viewership and normal like numbers for me currently at least. That's all. Either way, it's all good. Yeah, this is already starting to look a lot better. The face is going to be a challenge here um, because um, because everything's so dark. It's going to be a challenge just to be able to see what I'm trying to paint, honestly. I think that's going to be the biggest challenge here. Theoretically, I have no problem merging things, but I uh, I want to do it with a little more intentionality. I'll put it that way. It's so funny. I was just thinking about it. It's so funny how like there are certain areas in a painting or certain aspects of a painting rather that the intentionality is so vital because you can do all kinds of stuff in a painting, but if you're not doing it intentionally, then it's a mistake. And if you're doing it intentionally, then it's not a mistake. And then at the same time, the like happy accidents play such a big part of it. Uh, and setting it up to have those is such a good thing in my opinion. Um, yeah, it's funny that those two things in a way are contradictory to each other. So another thing to keep in that I try and keep in mind when working from photos is the dynamic range of cameras is a lot less than the dynamic range of our eyes. And so if you don't want your paintings to look like they're photos or photo reproductions, um, you have to work at that to kind of reduce that. Now, there's nothing wrong with working from photos, and there's nothing wrong with it looking like you worked from photos. It's just something to keep in mind. For example, I think what's his name? Um, oh, like for instance, Rockwell. Uh, I don't think his paintings look like they're, you know, photo reproductions in any way, but he did work from photo reference all the time. But he was so good that he could make it look like, he had captured a moment in time versus he painted a photo, a photograph. So, and if you're curious, then how do you do that? Um, Part of it's experience, of course, and you know, working from life is very helpful because it gives you that Rolodex in your head to know how to handle it. That says, "Oh, no kidding. I try to take a pic of my paintings and they turn out horrible." Um, well, no, I'm not saying a photo of your paintings, although taking photos of your paintings is also extremely challenging, for sure. That can also be very, very challenging. Cameras just aren't capable of reproducing and capturing all the color and all the dynamic range um, that a painting can have. Like there's a painting I've been working on. I put it aside for a while, and I want to get back to it, but I can't do it on stream because the camera just isn't capable of picking up the range. So half of the painting is like very, very light, and half of it's very, very dark, and it just can't keep up with it. This, as I was referring to you saying the camera doesn't have the same range as our eyes do. Yes, yeah, you're absolutely right. But yeah, so yeah, so that painting I'm going to have to do on my own time because the camera just is not capable of is just not capable of it. So when you're painting from photo reference, the same thing can happen. Some of the things you can do to mitigate that is when you take the photo, you can bracket, so you can do a lower exposure, medium exposure, higher exposure, or you can do even more than just three. But yeah, that can help. Shooting in RAW, if you're into camera stuff, that can also help. Um, and then what else? Working from life is very beneficial to give you that experience, and then you can invent some of it too. I mean, obviously that's never perfect, but you know, it is something. The other thing that's interesting is um, if you'll notice this if you go outside and you like look at a during the day, and you look at like a tree, and inside the shadow, a lot of times, like the tree trunk and everything will appear, practically black or whatever. Oh, excuse me for excuse me. Sorry about that. So yeah, like if you go outside and you look at like a tree trunk or underneath something like that where there's a shadow, a lot of times it'll look completely black. But if you give your if you give your eyes a second, a lot of times they will adjust and then you'll see a ton more. And cameras do have that ability, but uh not as good as our eyes, That's just our eyes are just better than our cameras currently. Unless you know, the not including infrared and ultraviolet, They, the cameras have us beat there, that's for sure. And the HDR cameras are getting better. Uh, Cameras are still really not that good at reproducing color, though. It's also worth mentioning that if you take, for instance, if you take a photo of the easiest way to do this is just go outside. And the reason I say go outside is because you know that um, the light outside can reproduce all of the colors. Um, that's another issue. People's lighting is often really bad, but that's a different thing. But yeah, go outside, stand with you know, stand there with someone and take a photo of them and then just study their face for a second and look at their skin. Note all the little colors and the color shifts and like all the stuff we have going on in our face. Not just our face, it's all over, but face is very common. And then go look at the photo and you have even, if you have any of that nuance in there. Unfortunately, I don't think you will. And digital cameras, especially in camera phones, they try to smooth stuff out on your face and in the color and everything. And then there's also another big issue with camera phones, but not just camera phones. Also, digital cameras, like full-on cameras, but cell phones especially have an issue with this. They try to over sharpen everything, and that is also a big problem. So try to pay attention to that. Yeah, that can be an issue. Des says, I think I might be finished with my sister. Nice. Well, if you want to share the painting, I'm happy to look at it. Or let me rephrase that. I'd love to see your painting is really what I meant to say. But I do know that you might not be ready to share it yet in the sense that you might want to let your eyes refresh and then come back to it. That's really what I was trying to say. This says, can't get a good photo of it too. Try over the next few days. Okay, no problem. Yeah. So for photo reference, I can talk about this a little bit. So the ideal conditions for taking a photo of your art. I read an article about someone who has this technique where they measure, the placement of the lights, and they have two lights on the side exactly at 45 degrees, and they have a camera straight in front of their their painting, and the lights are really good lights, so the color reproduction is really good. And they use what is it? Polarized film over the lights, and polarized film over the camera, so that you don't get any glare and so on. It's a whole production, and that's really hard to do. And I understand that most people are not going to be able to do that, which is totally understandable. I don't do that either. That's a lot. There are other things you can do. One is just the angle of the light sometimes, like getting your camera above the angle that it would, reflect can help. Sometimes you'll have to skew it a little bit later, but that can be something. And then polarized like sheets, like film, like a plastic film. It's actually not that expensive. So that in itself isn't that expensive. And then so you can do that if you want to get into it. Even if you're not going to go through all those extremes, just having some polarized film can be helpful. I've actually used it here, and probably need to buy a couple more sheets of it, but I've put it up on the light that's above my painting, just hung it there, and then put a polarizer on my camera, an ND filter, a circular polarizer, and that cut down glare a lot. You do end up having to bump up the light a bit, because it's essentially like having sunglasses on top of your light and on top of your camera, so everything gets darker. But yeah, there was a great article on Muddy Colors about it. I don't know if you can still access it, because Muddy Colors is now, I think, behind a paywall. But I don't know if that article is still available. The other option that they recommended is just during the day, finding someplace outside with shade, and just using natural bounced light if you can. Just be careful not to, what's it called? You do have to be careful about, I guess, reflected light. that was the issue I ran into with that, is that I got a lot of blue reflected back into my painting. So I ended up having to do quite a bit of color correcting to, get that out. That's why, that's one of the reasons why if you notice when I'm painting, I always wear like very muted colors, because of reflected light can tint your perception of your painting. So for instance, if I were to wear like a really bright red shirt and then a really bright green shirt, my painting can actually look very different to me, not in a good way. As far as lights go, you can't beat natural light, of course. But if you have to work indoors without natural light, and that's like most people, um, they've got really good lights now for pretty cheap, relatively speaking. I shared one company I've used. Um, I think it's like Next Wave, not Next. Is it Next Wave or New Wave? What is the name of this brand? Now I'm curious. I always forget. Waveform. That's it. Waveform lighting. I've had really good experiences with them, but I've also bought uh, some lights from Amazon. You just have to know what to look for. You want the CRI to be like above 95 at minimum, but now there's also a few other. There's another metric that they started using in addition to that, which also helps you know if the light is good or not. That says, so the ceiling fan has 3 of those bulbs in it. Oh, you have the natural light bulbs for your room studio. Okay. Those ones are pretty good too. Those ones are probably like, I think those are like what I would say is like I hate to say it this way, but I'd say like the minimum of like quality. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying like, if you can't afford any, if you have to just go with like hardware light bulbs, those are the ones to go with. That's what I'm trying to say. But nowadays you can also get decent LED lights from Amazon for pretty cheap. So, those are actually better than some of the things you'll find, or a lot of the things you'll find online on Amazon. So, you have to know what to look for, I'd say. Like I said, you also want neutral light too, not a warm light or a very cool light, I guess. I know they sell, what's it called? Uh, Nowadays they have the RGB lights that go into regular, RGB LED lights that go into regular sockets, but I don't know what the quality of those lights are. I have not researched it. Another thing that's really good to do is, um, after you've done a couple paintings, after they're dry, you know, it's really good to take your paintings outside, out of your room, into other rooms during, like, you know, to see what it looks like under different lighting conditions. Des says, I think it's possible that by me pushing to the take pick button makes my phone shake and the pic is blurry. I don't have a tripod or stabilization. Ah, yeah, yes, that will happen. So what you can do for that is you can either set your camera to a timer, or since it's your phone, you can either do that, or you can also do voice activation. So that way you just hold it in place and then you either click the button and then stabilize yourself, or, you know, or use voice activation. Also, for anyone who's taking a photo and you don't have a tripod and that's an issue, keep your camera or phone closer to your body so you're not extending your hand out. You can also brace yourself, like one hand on top of the other to help it. And then, you know, as you're going to take the photo, slow your breathing down, or even hold your breath for like a couple seconds as you're taking the photo. Those are all things that can help. When I used to ink traditionally on comic book work, I would hold my breath for when I would do like long, smooth strokes. And there were times where I was working and I'm like, man, well, I'm getting really lightheaded. What's going on? And then I realized, oh yeah, it's because I'm holding my breath like all the time. I literally was depriving myself of so much oxygen that I started getting like lightheaded and stuff. In case anyone isn't familiar with this, there are two terms that refer to a specific part of the shadow, and they're not interchangeable, but they're referring to almost the same thing. There is the core shadow, and then there is the terminator, which is not a term I'd heard before until like a couple of years ago. And like I said, they almost are referring to the same thing, although my understanding is it's slightly different. Core shadow is the shadow that is the like darkest part before it gets to the light. So it's a part of the shadow that's the darkest, not including like what is it called? Proximity shadows. I forget the name for them right now. The terminator is referring to, I guess, where the shadow and the light neat or transition. It's often very, very similar or almost the same thing. Yeah, I still find those two things kind of confusing, the difference between them. Um, but the reason I was mentioning it is that the core shadow uh, is really one of those things that really helps paintings or drawings look good. Getting it right really helps. The other thing too is that sometimes the core shadow can actually have a very different hue to it, because you have to think that the core shadow isn't having any bounced light back into it. That's why it's darker than the rest of the light, the shadow. So a lot of times the shadows will be because of things around them. For instance, here or on your body, a lot of times, if you're holding something or people are holding something, a lot of times the reflected light that comes into your shadows a is a warm color because our skin is warm. And so the reflected light is a warm color. And so, your shadows end up being very warm. But the core shadow uh, isn't going to have that reflected light in it. So often it will be a lot cooler or just neutral. But sometimes neutral can look very, very cool in comparison. Wish I could remember the name of that. There's an exact term for the shadows that are next to things. Um, it's like, let's say right here, this shadow that's in the pinch. There's a name for it. Or if you have like uh, you know, if you have a ball on a surface, the part where it's like touching the surface, there's a specific name for that type of shadow, but I can't remember what it's called right now. There's this guy on YouTube, Marco Bucci, I think is how you pronounce his name. He he's a really good artist, and he does a lot of videos and covers a lot of really interesting stuff. He does cover that subject and some others. I highly recommend his stuff. A lot of his videos are just like 10 minutes long. He is very much a digital artist, even though um, he can paint traditionally, and he does do like watercolors and stuff like that. But most of his videos, even if he's using watercolors, he uses a lot of digital stuff to like explain and show it and so on. But yeah, really good videos. Highly recommend his stuff. Also, I should mention that tripods um, are great to have. I know everything costs money. I realize that. And I do take a lot of photos of my paintings for like my website and stuff like that just on my phone. But the photos that I take to like keep, what's it called? Like when I sell a painting, if I want to and I do want to keep a digital copy of said painting, I take a photo. I take photos, multiple photos with my camera on set to RAW so that I can, help restore anything that I might accidentally lose and so on. Yeah, it's ideally I would do that for everything right away, and then also I would match it to the painting, not just take photos, send it off, and then not know what the painting looks like. You know, yeah. But yeah, tripods, I was going to say, are not that expensive anymore. I know everything's money and everything's expensive. I realize that. But I'm just saying, they do have like literally $20 tripods that are very functional. Another thing you can do if a tripod isn't an option, in the future, if you need to set it up, you can. There are ways of just propping up your phone without a tripod. It's not as convenient, but there are ways of doing it. This isn't Des, by the way. This isn't like what's it called? Aimed at you or anything. I'm just talking in general, like in case people aren't thinking about it or hadn't considered it or, whatever. Oh, I should mention it. I saw a thing also for anyone who is looking for cameras. I saw a thing that apparently Sony cameras are on sale right now. It's like a flash sale or something. So if you're not watching this live, most likely it's probably done with. Also, I will say, after buying a new camera, I can say that most likely a used camera would have been a better option. Yeah. If I had to do it again, I probably would try and buy uh, a used camera instead of a new camera. Although, if you do want to do what I'm doing and stream with it and everything, that becomes a little more complicated because a lot of the older cameras, if you want to record or stream, a lot of them could only record up to 30 minutes of video at a time, which can be a real hassle. And then the other thing is a lot of them don't have clean HDMI out. So yeah, it starts becoming a little more complicated if you want to do this type of stuff with it. If anybody does have questions about any of this stuff, you're welcome to ask either now or later. But I'm not when it comes to cameras and streaming stuff, I'm not exactly an expert, but I've done some research about it, getting ready to, stream here. But EPOS Vox and I think Alpha Gamer or Senpai Gaming, I think, on YouTube are two channels that have a lot of reviews and information about streaming. So a lot of resources I get from there. Just realized I have my YouTube and my Twitch chat in opposite places than they normally are, and that confused the hell out of me for a second. It says, okay, taking the big step in doing an acrylic underpainting on a new portrait. Okay, cool. Look forward to seeing that. It says I need to get these done in time, dry and varnish, and redo if necessary. Yeah. Yeah, Ted, so I'm really excited for you for this project. I look forward to being able to share it with everybody once you're, at that stage. So it says it's honestly very scary. I can understand that, but I have faith in you. In some ways, this really feels like I'm just laying in the basic colors again, like redoing what I already did. Not 100%, but it definitely has a bit of that feeling to it. All right. I'm gonna I'm gonna do a short stream today. I have other things I have to do tonight, unfortunately. I'd love to just keep painting all night. That's not meant to be tonight. So I'm gonna end stream in a minute or two. I stream 3 times a week on Twitch and on YouTube. Uh, Sunday afternoon, um, Monday night, and Wednesday night are my stream schedule. I I announce it in Discord all the time. I try to announce other places. Sometimes I forget. Uh, yeah. Let's see. What else do I need to like, subscribe, all that stuff, I guess. Um, I have paintings available for purchase in my shop, which I recently set up. So hope someone buys something so I'm not paying for an expensive website for nothing. Let's see. I don't know. I think that's about it. Yeah, also, if anyone has questions or anything, welcome to ask in the comments or join the Discord and you can ask there or on any of my social media, honestly. Have a good night. See you on Sunday for sure. Yeah, Des. Absolutely. See you Sunday. And good luck with your painting. When you're painting with acrylics, I'm trying to think. I don't know if you've started yet or not, but I'm trying to think. Because oil paints the white color, like white specifically, but also a lot of the lighter colors tend to be more opaque. Um, it might be worth uh, focusing on the darker colors rather than putting in than the light colors. Not saying don't put in the lights. I'm just saying like if you have to put in if you're putting in a color and you know you're going to be going in to modify it, maybe put in the dark part of that color so that you can go lighter versus putting in a light version of that color and then going darker with the oils. I don't know if that makes sense if I'm explaining it properly, but yeah. Alrighty. It says, yeah, I usually go dark to light. Yeah, that's the comment. That's oils and acrylics. That's how you should, quote unquote, should paint, you know? All right. Hey, have a good night, everybody.